Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog. I hope you are doing very well today. It is Monday, September 4th. I have today off. It is Labor Day in the United States, which is an extra day off, which I appreciate. I don't get many of these extra days off. So I am here filming my August wrap up. Had a pretty relaxed weekend. It was 111 on Saturday and 104 yesterday, so did not get much done other than reading. So I was able to finish a book and read another book. So I have thrown them into this wrap up just because it kind of feels like it was the end of August. So let's get started because I do have a few books and I don't want this video to go too long. The first book I'm going to tell you about is Exit West by Mohsin Hamid. I don't really have to say a lot about this book. You know, it's longlisted for the Man Booker Prize, and that it has kind of been around. A lot of people really like it or dislike it. It's very polarizing, which I was surprised by. This is the story of Nadia and Saeed. They live in a sort of an unnamed country, which is suffering from a civil war. The premise of the book is that these doors open in random places and you can go through those doors and sort of travel west. And what happens due to some circumstances in their country and sort of their budding relationship, Nadia and Saeed travel through these doors, and it's the story of them going through those doors and sort of what goes on in the world, how they and other refugees are received in the countries that they arrive at. There's something really interesting about this book, and I've been trying to figure out how to explain it to you guys. It's a stylistic choice. So there's a lot of the refugee crisis that is seen by a lot of the world through a television screen, through your news programs, through your computer screen. So there's sort of a screen or a distance between you and the refugee experience. What I think that Mohsin, I want to call him by his last name, I don't know why, did brilliantly is I think the book starts at a distance. It starts with that screen between you and the experience of your characters. And as the characters flesh out and their experience fleshes out, that screen or that sort of protecting the reader from that experience disintegrates until you are there with them. And I thought that was brilliant. There is this distance, like you're not quite there with them until you are. And I thought that was really good. The relationship between Saeed and Nadia is extremely realistic and very, very well done and very powerful. The world and its effects on those type of things is not always accurately depicted in fiction, and I would say in this one it does it really well. I highly, highly recommend this book. This was a 5-star read for me, and that's Exit West by Mohsin Hamid. The next book that I'm going to tell you about, Joseph reviewed in his video that we did together, but I wanted to make sure if you didn't watch it that I did talk about it, and that's Franklin's Flying Bookshop by Jen Campbell and Katie Harnett. I wanted to say Luna. Luna is the main character of the book, or one of the main characters, not the author of the book. Most of you probably know Jen Campbell from her channel. She's a sweetheart, and I love her channel. And this book comes out in the next week, I think, so I highly recommend it. This is the story of Franklin, who is a dragon, who wants friends and loves to read, and people are scared of him, and he meets a little girl named Luna, and they create a flying bookshop. I think that this is an amazing book to teach friendship. Don't judge people by the way they look. Also, the importance of books and developing relationships. The artwork by Katie Harnett is amazing, which I will show you if I can get to it. My favorite picture, there you go. Me over the top. Me over the top. Did you see it? This book is fantastic. You can go to Jen's website and pre-order it or order it and she will sign it. I will link that below for you guys. I'm going to get it for all my nieces and nephews for Christmas because I loved it that much and I love to do that. The next book I'm going to tell you about is Ties by Domenico Starnone, and I totally butchered that, and I'm sure you guys will help me with that. It's translated from the Italian by Jhumpa Lahiri. Everyone knows Jhumpa Lahiri. This was one of my Mothbox books that I got, and so glad I did. It is so good, you guys. So this is the story of a marriage in 3 parts. The first part of the novel is from the point of view of the wife, written in letters, to her husband who has left her for someone else. Enough said. Very passionate, very beautiful, very angry. Brilliant. The second section is told from the point of view of two other people. Well, actually, one other person. And then the third section is told from the point of view of two other people. I'm not going to tell you who or why or where because I don't want to give away any of the plot. But it is probably one of the most creative dissections of a marriage that has to deal with infidelity. That's all I'll really say about it. I thought it was beautifully translated. We all know that Jhumpa Lahiri can write, has no problem turning this book into something that is poetic and beautiful and fantastically. It was almost like a thriller of a marriage. Does that make sense? You know what? I've stolen that phrase, I think, from Simon. But it was kind of like the relationship had sort of this tension to it, and you wanted to know. You wanted to know. So it's super, super good. And that's Ties by Domenico Starnone. And I think if I read correctly, he is married to the woman who has been outed as Ferrante. That's what I heard. I read that somewhere. I don't know where. Don't take it as total truth, but I think that's it. And I'm going to be looking for some of his other translated works. The third or fourth book I'm going to tell you about is Binti Home by Nnedi Okorafor. And I talked to you about the first one in this series. This is sort of the second, and the third one comes out very soon. I would love to get an arc of it. It's so good. This is the story of Binti. She is a woman from Earth who lives in a community that never really leaves Earth, that lives in the desert, has their own sort of rituals and religious sort of take on the world, but she is brilliant. She is a mathematician and what they call in this world a harmonizer, and she wants to go to college. She goes in the first book, as I told you. This is about her return home. She's having some issues and distancing and hard times dealing with what she dealt with in the first book. So she wants to go home and go through a cycle. This is the story of returning home, her family, how they receive her, and also sort of a personal quest that she goes on to figure out who she is. Just as good as the first one. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. Binti Home by Nnedi Okorafor. She's slowly but surely becoming one of my favorite writers. I will highlight in a haul. I picked up a YA book by her, but it was so good. The next book I read was The Leavers by Lisa Ko. You know, I've talked about this book a lot. I adore Lisa Ko. I have met her now a number of times. I really liked her. But her book, this is a debut, and I could tell it was a debut. It was a little too chocked full of ideas. This is the story of Polly and Deming, who later becomes Daniel. Polly is his mother, who comes here from China pregnant, has Deming, and when he's 11, she is mysteriously taken away, and he is adopted by a white family in upstate New York and sort of changes his entire culture, doesn't know why his mother left. You get the rest of the story, who he becomes, why he becomes the way he is, his sort of struggles through college, and then you also get what happened to Polly when she got to China and where she winds up and the decisions she made about trying to find her son. When Lisa talked about this book to me and the groups that I went to, she talked about this idea of these people being taken and put in these for-profit sort of detention centers and the horrible things that happen to them and their children being torn away from them. I needed more of that in this book. I felt like the book wasn't dark enough for what I knew was going on in the background. And there was some stuff that I didn't know why we needed to know it. So I really appreciate her writing. She's a beautiful writer. And she has a really good turn of phrase. She's good at making people and creating character. This just had a little bit too many ideas. And the ideas that I really wanted her to go into, they weren't there. And that made me a little bit upset because I really thought that was the brilliance behind the story of making the novel. I think it's really good. It's a solid 3-star read, and I liked it, but I really wanted to love it, and it just didn't quite make it there for me. That's The Leavers by Lisa Ko. The next thing I'm going to tell you about is a short little thing, The Husband Stitch by Carmen Maria Machado. This was the short story that was in my page habit box, and I read you on the back. It's the story of a marriage, of a man and woman that get married. This woman has a ribbon around her neck that's the only thing that her husband is unable to touch, and he becomes obsessed with it. It's the story of them having their first child, her child becoming obsessed with it, sort of the distance it puts between her and her husband, and sort of the consequences. It turns out it seems all women have a ribbon somewhere on their body in this sort of world. It's really well done. It was a fast read. I think you can get it on granta.com for free. I will try to find it. If I don't, I apologize. But this was The Husband Stitch by Carmen Maria Machado, and it was a very interesting take on ownership of one's own body. I really liked it. The next two books are the ones I read this weekend. So the first is Goodbye Vitamin by Rachel Khong. I read this as a buddy read with Mercedes over at Mercy's Musings, and we both really enjoyed it. This is the story of a girl who comes home for a year to help her mom with her father, who is suffering from the onset of Alzheimer's and dementia. It is told in a diary form and has a sense of humor, which I, at the beginning, wasn't sure how I was going to take both of those factors. Rachel Khong is brilliant with both of them. The humor is touching and just perfect when you need it to be, because it's a heavy, heavy topic. She does something amazing in that she creates characters in small vignettes so perfectly that you get to know everybody in this guy's life, her father's life. And you get to know her and the decisions she's made and why she's where she is. You get to know her family, her mother, her brother, her friends, her ex-boyfriend, the students. It's amazing in that she creates it in such small doses. Now, I'm just going to read you one section that I thought was amazing, because I really think more people should read this book if you haven't. This is what her father says to her about suffering from Alzheimer's, and it may be one of the most perfect metaphors regarding something like this that I have ever heard. You mentioned that there were some things on your mind, but lately you were having trouble getting to them, assessing them. You had the feeling that all the thoughts were in a box covered in tape, and the trouble was that there was too much tape, and the trouble was you didn't have the proper tools to assess them. No scissors and no knife, and it was a lot of trouble. Every day it was new trouble, trying to find the end of the tape. That stuck with me the minute I read it. It's fantastic. There's these really touching sections where her father gives her sort of a journal that he wrote about her growing up, and then and it's really heartfelt. It's really, really well done, guys. So I highly recommend Goodbye Vitamin by Rachel Khong. And last but not least is The Trouble with Goats and Sheep by Joanna Cannon. I know that this has been everywhere. I don't know why I was so late to get to it, because it is so very, very good. Set in the summer of 1976 in England, it's the story of two young girls. A woman goes missing and they decide to find out why. They go to church and the pastor says that God is everywhere, so they, in theory, go searching for God to make sure he's protecting the people on the street. There's a man who has been sort of ostracized on the street. His name is Walter Bishop, and there's a lot of backstory about stuff that has gone on the street in the past. I don't want to give too much of it away. It is atmospheric. It is, you know this town, you know all of these people, and you can really feel them. I will say, halfway through the book, it reminded me a lot of To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. You had your Boo Radley, you had your little girl with best friend trying to solve something, you had families, and you had sort of this crime. I'm just going to leave it at that. That's not the right word, but I don't know exactly what to tell you about it because I don't want to give it away. It is so very, very, very good. I was totally enraptured. I flew through the book in just a couple days, which with work is pretty good for me. I am so excited for Joanna Cannon's next novel, which I hear is about an old lady. I have to get it, you guys. And that's The Trouble with Goats and Sheep. If you haven't gotten it, it's out in paperback in the US, and you really should read it if you haven't gotten around to it. Don't be late to the game like I was. Come on, jump on board. It's really good. So those are the books that I read in the month of August. Have you guys read any? Let's talk about them below. If you haven't or they sound interesting, always, let's talk about that below too. If you're a return subscriber, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. And if you are new to my channel, welcome. Thank you so much for coming by. I hope you guys have a fantastic week and that everything turns out good. I'll talk to you guys probably actually tomorrow. I have a surprise video going up. So I'll talk to you soon. Happy reading. Bye.